Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We can be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring Ghost Is as Ghost Does. I've come to realize that in general, we have an oversimplistic view on ghosts and spirits. We tend to think of them as spirits of deceased persons, which many are. Often the disembodied spirits we encounter are simply lost souls that need and welcome some help crossing over to the other side. Others may not be so sure they've lived a good enough life to be accepted in so-called heaven. Fearing hell and damnation, they choose to stay right here, thank you very much. We also have what is known as helping spirits. In this case, a loved one or an ancestor may have crossed over and then decide to come back to help the living. Many cultures and practices have a provision for contacting their deceased bloodline ancestors for help and guidance. What we fail to take into consideration is that many people end up carrying more than one spirit. For instance, my Lakota teacher informed me that one of the sacred responsibilities of a pipe carrier is to carry the spirit of the dead for a full year before psychopumping them to the other side. This gave the mourners all the milestones within a season to release their loved one. Once the pipe carrier delivered the spirit of the dead to the other side, their name was never mentioned again for fear of calling the ghost back to the land of the living. As a shamanic practitioner, I often carry a part of a person's essence for a while. The purpose is to give the person space to process issues resulting from fragmentation. To take on an entire frequency correction at once may result in debilitating pain, rage, or grief. By carrying their essence, I'm giving the person's heart or soul fragment a safe place to rest until they can complete their healing. I call it the drip method, as it enables them to integrate healing over a period of time while I maintain their lost frequency for them to access. Other forms of soul sharing are more ominous. If a person has suffered so much damage that they are extremely fragmented and carry intense rage, they can actually take on what some call possessing spirits. There are spaces left where a person has become fragmented. This becomes a vulnerability, as nature hates a vacuum. Like tends to draw like, rage begets rage, and this is the recipe from which serial killers are made. When a person dies carrying the frequency of rage to this degree, the soul of the person may very well cross over, leaving the spirit of pure rage free-floating until it finds another host. For lack of a better term, these evil spirits can hang around person, place, or thing, creating a haunting. They can also move into another fragmented, rageful individual should the opportunity present itself. Then we have the family line demons. In this scenario, a person carrying the spirit of rage targets offspring or a family member. The abuse causes the recipient to fragment, becoming rageful, and thus available to take on the same spirit possessing their abuser. This is handed down the family line for generations until the spirit of rage virtually has a life of its own. These are only a few examples of the many forms of spirits and ghosts existing in our world. In indigenous cultures, it was the duty of the shaman to repair fragmentation and transmute the frequency of negative emotions, thus protecting the people from spiritual illnesses such as these. In our modern-day culture has virtually been without these healers for generations. What we have out there is one big modern mess of mismatched frequencies and lost souls. It's no wonder children have nightmares. Many modern-day religions do have provision for protection. Practicing prayer, forgiveness, gratitude, and love are high-frequency expressions that can counteract the negativity. However, the untreated spiritual illness of fragmentation still poses a major problem. Our guest this hour is Bloody Mary, author of, go figure, Bloody Mary's Guide to Hauntings, Horrors, and Dancing with the Dead. Mary was born on the bayou. She's a 10th generation Creole with deep Catholic roots. Mary grew into a sincere and viable priestess who serves her town primarily as a psychopomp. She's known publicly as a Voodoo Queen, celebrity, historian, author, psychic medium, and owner-operator of the infamous Bloody Mary Tours. Her mystic abilities help her to create a full, well-rounded research technique that she shares with her guests. Her psychic knowledge works in tandem with avid research, creating a unique and holistic approach to understanding her hometown of New Orleans and the unseen worlds in which we live. After this short break, I'll introduce Mary, and together we'll strike up the music and dance with the dead. Should be fun, so don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Bloody Mary, author of Hauntings, Horrors, and Dancing with the Dead. Her website, www.bloodymaryneworleans.com. Mary, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic. Do you have on your dancing shoes?
Yes, I do. Always.
Well, let's
Especially
start by
since
addressing...
Dancing with the Dead is barefoot, so I'm barefoot.
Oh, well, that works. That works. So let's start by addressing the shamanic aspects of your practice. What training do you have in psychopumping, depossession, and self-protection?
Well, I am a Voodoo Queen in New Orleans voodoo tradition, which is, you have to realize that voodoo is shamanism. It's older than the shamanism, perhaps, of this country. Of course, that's debatable. But it's African shamanism that was brought with the slave trade that mixed with Native American Indian shamanism. So my roots are from apprenticing with many different people for the Voodoo Queen aspect, which is a handed-down title. And I'm also Voodoo Mambo Assagwe in Haitian voodoo, which is kind of a sister religion, developing differently there than here, but coming from the same roots in Africa. So my shamanistic training and with the spirit world is directly from the spirits as well as from those people that I trained within those traditions. And believe it or not, a lot to do with being born and raised Catholic. So the spirits came to me quite a lot, wouldn't let me sleep. They started it since I was a child.
They started, and
so the psychopomp, the psychopomp part, I would say that even though I am trained in these other traditions, in the long run, everyone is trained directly from spirit, and I was lucky enough to have that experience and being able to develop that openly in a town that is always known to be so haunted and so mystical as New Orleans. So I was lucky, or, it was predetermined that I would be here, and my family has been here since 1718, so I believe they give a great guiding hand ancestrally to my connection with the spirit worlds and the nature spirits of the great Mississippi, the water, the forest, the swamps, all of that are my teachers.
Got it. So, to bring us all on the same page, Mary, would you mind describing what psychopumping is?
Psychopomp. When you have you're between this world and the next. It's not necessarily just crossing someone over, because I'm not a big advocate of just run and jump and let's cross someone over. There's lots of steps, dance steps in between, right? So the psychopomp is one who lives in both worlds. One who has one foot in one side and one foot on the other, as a more technical description. But I do deal with spirits on both sides. I help them, they help me, both the physical humans that are still spirits trapped in their bodies and those that have no bodies anymore. So I believe that it's a two-way street, and I'm a strong advocate for spirit rights. So I work with the spirits on both sides. So I was jokingly named the necrotherapist at one point. But I suppose the necrotherapist works into the psychopompitude.
So, could you go a little more into how shamanism and the voodoo is related? They're pretty much the same thing, just a different style. Is that correct?
Different country, different origin, different needs, basically.
Right.
So many of the studies will prove or try to prove that most life beginnings were in Africa, correct? Most. So therefore, the first indigenous type of practice that was nurtured by land, sea, human, and spirit would have been there. So many people can claim voodoo as the oldest religion. So it's a dance religion, a musical religion, very nature-based, ancestral, reverent. All, watching the animals and what they do, learning their medicine direct, working with the parts of the animals, of the herbs, of the flowers, of the trees. Animistic in some ways. There's life forms in the waters, in air, in the fire, all of that. So all of that is very inclusive in the study. Plus, the farther back you go, most of these teachings, these Aboriginal type of religions, would have a strong belief in the protection and a little bit of fear of the ancestors who have come before, working with them. So that is all part of voodoo, not the Hollywood representation that you see most of the time about things like voodoo or Wiccan or witchcraft.
Mary, I'm so disappointed. I thought you were going to teach me how to make a doll.
Oh, I could teach you how to make a doll, but that would be your misinterpretation right away, because dolls aren't bad. Dolls are simply surrogates
Exactly.
for healing.
Exactly.
Or, and every culture, every religion has dolls. Hollywood's termed it the voodoo doll. But everyone in Native American, Indian, African, European, you name it, they all have some form of effigy, whether it is for holding of a spirit or healing of a person or, cursing. Cursing is not something that's taught. Unfortunately, cursing is something that's just absolutely natural in every single human being, because they are jealous and they curse without even knowing it sometimes.
That's the thing.
So I think cursing,
consciousness about it, isn't it? Just, we don't realize the power
it's just
of
horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Words, thoughts, they used to kind of make fun when the Catholics said, sins of thought or sins of deed, same thing kind of thing. But, if you sit there and you're penetrating and you're pushing hatred out at something, that can form a life of its own and be a curse.
Exactly.
So cursing is not taught as part of the religious practices of voodoo like you'd like to think on TV. There's a lot of protection. There's a lot of maybe reversing protection. And hopefully, of course, the ultimate thing is the transformation of the issues into something positive.
Exactly.
But that's much harder than, harder, and a lot of people don't get that. And just like anything, there's certain levels of expertise that one acquires and certain levels of spirituality that you either, go to the quick version at the other end to do dark, or you work for the goal.
Got it. So I'd like to go a little bit more in your stance on the rights of spirits. What do you mean by them having rights?
Well, I believe that they built a particular town. They built a particular house that you may live in. They lived on the land. They have rights to visit, protect, cleanse, clear, they have visitation rights. Just because they left the world doesn't mean they can't come back and visit, and that they don't have a vested interest in it. I believe that we should set boundaries and live as a family together if they're coming to visit, but you learn to, it's like an adopted family. So my house came with spirits. I brought some of my work home with me too, but there were already spirits here, and sometimes they all didn't get along, so you have to kind of, work with it. But I think we can learn much from the spirits who, in the past, just as, people always talk about how we help them cross over. They help us. We have to learn to listen. They have rights to speak. They have rights to get angry on what we did to their person, place, city, thing, whatever it may be. Angry doesn't mean evil. You need to sit down and talk when someone's angry. You need to figure it out. You need to find a balance. So cooperation with the spirit world and such is part of their rights, but to listen, to respect their wisdom. And,
Very important.
Let them come over. Let them come over and hang out once in a while.
So the kind of spirits
give them a shot. I give them a glass of wine,
The kind of spirits you're talking about are the ones that were at one point in a human body. Is that correct?
Well, no, all of the spirits, because obviously the nature spirits who were in an area that was, let's say, a forest that was recently cut down that you're building a house on, you better go talk to them.
Yeah.
If you want things to go right, you're pretty dumb not going to talk to them. Of course, people don't give credence to that type of energy because it would thwart their progress, what they think is progress, by, clearing land. But, talking to the spirits of land, telling them what's going to happen, giving them opportunity to maybe vacate to a different area, to work with them, to maybe use some of the wood you cut down to build into the house and let them be a part of it. There are many ways of negotiation that would reflect respect and, pretty much giving them spirit rights.
That's beautifully stated. I've found in my shamanic practice, it's not that you can't cut down a tree. It's not that you can't move rocks around or this or that, but it's that reverence and permission and honoring and giving as good as you're taking that makes all the difference. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. So New Orleans,
even when you cut a herb, you should give something,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much traditional, normal across shamanic traditions, no matter what country, is that understanding of fair exchange and give and take. So that's really beautifully stated. Yeah. So New Orleans is notoriously haunted. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, there's never one reason, for anything. But I think a forgotten part, or just not known, I'm not sure if anybody even knew it, is that all 80% of New Orleans is really supported by underground rivers. Mm-hmm. We are not only are we a bowl because we dip down, but we're a bowl because we're filled with water. And so there's lots of travel routes, for the spirits. By the way, 80% of New Orleans flooded in Katrina, and 80% of us is covered with underground water. Just for the math for you there. So pretty much, we are a swamp. We are below. We're in that belly. We're kind of in that betwixt and between that is the Psychopomp. I say that we're an amphibious city, because if I say we're reptilian, that brings out a whole other show, right? So we are amphibious. We're amphibious in nature, in the ancient meaning of the word. So part of that, we've had a tumultuous history here, but of course I guess many places have lots of highest mortality rate in North America. But simple things. We're a port town, right? On the physical plane, we're a portal on the spiritual plane. As above, so below. They keep coming. And going. We're on a direct ley line with Cairo, Egypt, with something that a lot of people don't know, as well as at the great points of Tibetan areas. We're right at a ley line with all those things. At the point of the mouth of the Mississippi, the mother here. So all of these things contribute to the spirit energy here, and the permissiveness that we allow that to become part of our culture, and we don't negate it or hide from it, and always have. You can look back at books in the 1700s and 1800s that talk about the spirit world that's here. So all of those things help us to be the spirit city or the mystical city that we are.
Well, fantastic. We're going to have to take
Plus
a
the
little
food.
break here, but we will return to our discussion after this short break and talk more about water and spirits in New Orleans. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. You want to hear more? Previous broadcasts of innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. Visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Bloody Mary, author of Hauntings, Horrors, and Dancing with the Dead. Her website, www.bloodymarynewOrleans.com. Mary, you and I were discussing water and spirit, and I'd like to go a little further into this, New Orleans, of course, being mostly water. Do you think that the crystalline structures of the water are part of what help hold spirits there?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of it that way. I think it helps them travel and move, that with the ley lines, the energy of movement here. I don't think they're held here. I think they visit and vacation here, and that we are a tourist city on both sides of the veil. I think they come and they go pretty easy. Some, depending on their lifestyles, may be attached to a particular area of, especially in the cases of something dramatic like what I call a blood print, where there was something very heavy going on in an area. But in general, I think they come and they go. It was extremely obvious after Katrina when I would say that they were all gone. I say they evacuated with the families and they had the ability to move very easily, but they didn't have the ability to find their way back with all the disruption until some of the people came back, which was about a 3-year journey. It was the hardest time of my life, but it was a very teaching time of my life. With the spirits being gone, you could feel the energy so totally different. But unfortunately, as they left quickly, like everyone else, they left the door open and some other things slithered in, not so pretty, which also had the way, they smelled fear, they smelled food, they smelled energy. This was a place that looters came in the flesh and in the spirit world. Bottom feeders smelled the way of, availability to rip off and to suck off. Suckers, as a generic term, secure. It was a very interesting, extremely hard time, but it showed, the movement of spirit energy. Why the other ones were kind of like in my visions. The best way to describe it were like almost even kidnapped, held captive, or something. They couldn't easily make it back. So whether the water that was covering the city was not pretty water, it was tainted, toxic, dirty, disgusting water for that time period of the, the storm. So I guess it goes both ways is the answer to that one as far as the water. The humidity, I always say the humidity is it's sticky to us, it's sticky to them. That helps them stay here too.
You stuck to the darn thing, huh? So what do you see as the difference between a visitation and a haunting?
I guess I can use both words, rather loosely. I would say, if you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts, that haunting might mean that something really needs work. That they're really stuck there and they need to be able to, like you were talking about earlier, to pull themselves together instead of living in their fragmentation of their deeds and their horrors that they left behind, have to be pulled together. That might be more of a haunting, where a visitation is someone, that has the free right to come and go. I don't have any of my spirits bound that I know of. In my opinion, they have the right to come and go. And they do exercise that right quite frequently. Sometimes it comes in cycles, if you've ever noticed that.
Yes,
there's much more haunted cycles, and then there's, so it can come in cycles. But I guess most people would say a haunting would be something that is negative. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Hauntings is just a more solidly present entity in an area. What do you describe as the difference between a hauntings and a visitation?
Well, pretty much what you're saying. It's like a haunting to me is where the spirit or the frequency or the energy is really kind of stuck, and it's stuck to the place. Where a visitation is they can come and go at will, and they aren't quite as bound to a location or another person. That's the way I see it. Is that pretty much what we're talking here?
Yeah, I really don't believe that a lot of the spirits are stuck. And I don't believe that especially untrained people should just be walking into places and try to cross spirits to the other side. They might be doing them a disservice. You can work with them, you can help them heal, you can talk with them, and time is on our side. Not
Absolutely.
Theirs. You don't have to rush into a thing, because that might cause a culture shock and make them come back and even do it worse. So I find very few that are truly, truly stuck. A lot that have needs, help, and that come over to help us in order to, lack of an easy way to explain it is earn their wings kind of thing. But many will come back and forth. I don't think there's as many horrific hauntings as people like to think, and some people just blow everything out of proportion.
Boy, you got that right. We've seen plenty of that on TV, aren't we?
Yeah, it's come on, seriously, this one little thing is going to be a whole episode. Would I have 10 things like that happen a day that I don't even shrug at?
Exactly.
Hollywood also gives the spirits some bad ideas.
Some of their worst ideas comes from Hollywood, right?
Because then they do them. You blame them for something. Hey, well, I might as well do it, right?
Might as well be hung for a wolf as a lamb, right?
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I've noticed this phenomenon. I wonder if maybe you could clear up for me. It seems like there's, your normal spirits that have personalities, and they come and they go and they change and they do this and they're that. And then there's these things that I call imprints, where trauma was repeated over and over again in an area, and it's not like the spirit is there so much, but you can actually, like the woman in black goes every so often to the people line up to watch her go to the ceremony at the funeral from the 1800s, and every anniversary of this death, she shows up there, but she doesn't interface with anybody. She doesn't interact with anybody. It's almost like what I call a trace. Have you noticed the difference between those two?
Yes. A lot of people call that residual energy or whatever. But if I wanted to communicate with her, I would go there on that anniversary day. I would, leave something out for her. I would, through that imprint, you can pull the spirit through.
Gotcha.
So, if you want to work with her, if you want to help her, if you want to find out her history, if you want to know where the buried treasure is, whatever it is, you go there on that time period. Anniversaries and places like that, are very important. Little bits of her there probably all the time, but more so on that date. So I believe that is a way for a spirit to come through the residuals. So an old Celtic saying I talk about all the time is you can retrace your steps of life in death. Hauntings aren't really as much about where you died at as where you lived at, where you grew up, where you went to school, favorite vacation spots. Everything you do in this world is kind of like leaving a trail of astral breadcrumbs. The more energy, the more emotion, the bigger the pile, the easier it is to come back when the flesh is gone. She's on one of those trails. That's what that residual imprint. That same lady might be at her birth house, too. Find that birth house. Go there. See what else you could connect with. Pick up the pieces And, like we talk about the fragmentation, pick up those pieces and put them back together. Find a person who's bloodline connected, if you know the name of the woman, right?
Right.
Put something out of that she might like, and you can work with her on those days, on those times, if you want to, But
So
obviously she's still
basically,
got something
Mary,
she's dealing with.
what I hear you saying, and this is really exciting for me, is that some of the work that you do is like doing soul retrieval for the dead.
Absolutely. I am also a licensed hypnotherapist, but I do it on both sides, and that's what a psychopomp does. It isn't just somebody that crosses over. There's so much more to it, and it is more of a necrotherapist, but on both sides. So yes, you can help them put back together. I have another interesting thing on that aspect. Soul retrieval could continue after you're dead, and I have bumped into several of my past life souls that I've had to integrate back into myself that I was lucky enough to bump into, which I think is an interesting thing, too. So that brings up a whole other segment of conversation, I'm sure. But, soul retrieval is part of it, and I do that with the dead. If you look at Chapter 1, my chapter about Julie, it was about everything you were talking about. There's a residual imprint. There's a leftover anger that manifested on its own into its own life. It jumped into a person. It jumped out. There were names for these things. Here it was the Jeru and the Hank. And these types of entities that grew a life of their own that fed on other anger or betrayal or whatever the original sin was, let's say, in the place that caused the imprint / what I call blood print to begin with. This stuff, some people call it egregore, that's a more scientific word. But yes, they can have life of their own, just like those evil thoughts and deeds can spiral into things. Yeah.
Well,
and,
we're going to have to take another break. At the end of this short break, we're going to come back and talk about possessing spirits and depossession. We'll be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. Our website is www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Bloody Mary, author of Hauntings, Horrors, and Dancing with the Dead. Her website, www.bloodymaryneworleans.com. Mary, are you ready to talk about possessing spirits?
Sure.
See, you're just so easy.
Unfortunately, I have to deal with those too.
So would you mind kind of defining them?
Sure. There are many people that are in a vulnerable state for one reason or another in their lives, and they become easy to walk into from spirits that want to feed upon them, using the word I used before, suker, with generic terms, sucking out the parasitic type spirits. Or, spirits that are just looking for a ride but then end up taking over because the person is so weak. I have had many cases that I've had to depossess / exercise, whatever word you prefer. And to put it out there, the sooner the better, right? As soon as you feel something attached to you too heavily that's not feeling yourself, go take care of it right away. Don't wait until it's so deeply embedded that you're almost used to this symbiotic nature and it's harder to get rid of. As soon as possible. We as humans in this particular century and the last have a tendency to wash our body and our hair and our clothes more often than they did, let's say, a century before. But we forget about cleansing our aura and our cells and our soul. So you have to do, maintenance work, simple things, salt baths, smudgings, whatever it is. But do that on a regular basis, too, and maybe more so if you have a heavy job that is, let's say, full-time in the graveyard like me, or a paranormal investigator, or someone like a healer, or, where there's lots of hardship around you. You should cleanse spiritually.
Right, because as people fragment around you, then it kind of draws in that energy that looks for a place that has a vacuum. So if you're in a traumatic situation, like I've done periodically, lots of search and rescue. In fact, went into the Big Thompson Canyon when there was that huge flood that killed all the people up here. And I was retrieving dead bodies is what I was doing. And after a while, I started realizing, whoa, I'm not alone in here anymore. Better do something about this.
I call it a waxy buildup, too, It's like on your clothes. You're doing this work, you're feeling it, all of a sudden you realize, I got more than I can handle, I'm carrying. And I know I have made this mistake over the years, like, well, I'm so protected all the time, my spirit guides, they all take care of it, da-da-da-da-da. But then once in a while, they all go away, and then you are in trouble. And that happened to me recently. So we think, we might be invincible because we've got such great spirit guides, but they retire, they fall off. You have to balance and work with that too. So, be protected. Don't be afraid to put up your protections, and don't forget to take them off so that you can receive all the good that's in the world too.
I find that protection is about frequency. And so if we're attuned to the higher frequency things like gratitude, a prayer, love, those kind of frequencies, that it gives us a little leeway as well. Have you experienced that?
A little leeway, but it's not 100%. That's what I'm saying is basically don't think that you're impenetrable. Because you're so light and happy and love and, praying all the time, and you've got these great spirit guides, that something can't get in. It can. Just don't be afraid, because fear is bad, but just be aware. Being aware is very important. So yes, of course that helps. I mean, some of the first things I tell people to do is to go work for charity, go do something as part of the payment of what, you're doing back to the universe, so that you can get in a better place. But yet, I don't want the workers to think that they're so, connected that it could never get to you too, because there's always a payment, even if you're doing good work. Just don't let it get you.
Right. We all have bad days, right? So when is depossession the proper course of action, and when would you consider it counterindicated?
Well, if it's affecting their lives to such a negative level that, that they can't sleep, that there's entities or things going on in the house, that it's hurting they notice all their pets around them getting sick, they notice all their friends dropping off or disappearing, or their business and money all at the same time, I think you need to do it as quick as possible. Now, depossession, to me, it's an intense cleansing or a little bit, exorcism, are all very similar processes. And I think that we all carry stuff, and that it couldn't hurt when you go get it done anyway. That we carry our own fears, regrets, problems that eventually can work themselves up into their own little negative entity draining you. Half the stuff we carry is from our own problems, But, get it done, get it balanced, transform it, whatever it is, take it out, transform it, do the best you can, identify it, and try to release it from the person, and do regular maintenance. Sometimes once is not enough, not just one cleansing of the house or one salt bath. You have to do a variety of different ways, many different things.
So do you have a spiritual team that you work with when you're doing depossession?
No, I prefer to work alone. I do have a team, though. I have my husband, and I have my son, and I have my co-priestess. But when I actually do the things, for some reason I like to work alone. I might have them on alert elsewhere, holding energy, Occasionally I'll have them there, but I don't know. And I don't say that that's the best route for everyone at all. But for me, I don't know why. Maybe I'm worried about the other people jumping there. I don't know. I do like to do most of these things alone, but I'm not alone because I have the spirits with me too.
Right, you spirit helpers for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have people if I need them. If it's a place, then I can push them out on the four corners to hold the energy or something. But in general, when I do, it's usually one-on-one.
Got it. Okay. So, what can you tell me about? I've had to deal with people that have been unconscious in the hospital and come back carrying more than just them. Have you seen that?
Kind of. Not necessarily unconscious, but when my mother was in hospice, it was, of course, hard on an emotional level, but it was also hard. It was on another level that there were lots of things bouncing around in there, that they were, and she, almost every time you went to sleep, it seems like they were going on the other side and coming back with more than what they thought. So yes, especially in hospice, I have seen that more than, just like a person walking to me for a reading or a healing. But yes, I have seen that, and it was very difficult, actually, because it didn't seem like it had any rhyme or reason for being there, And then a couple of them followed me. But yeah, in hospice, I have noticed that. So yeah, I guess we're all in between the worlds when we're unconscious, maybe even more so when you're in the hospital or on drugs or borderline being living and dead, So yes, I have noticed that, and I've tried to help it, yeah. I'm just thinking of this one case, this one kid that came back with my mom. He was just what would you call a bad seed?
Well, before we run out of time,
causing trouble.
Before we run out of time, Mary, would you mind telling the listeners where they can pick up your books?
Yes, you can pick it up from me on my website, BloodyMaryNewOrleans.com. That way you will get it autographed. Of course, you can get it on Amazon, and you could get it anyway, all the different places. If you come into town, it's at most of the stores, and it's also at BarnesandNobles.com. And it's hopefully going to be everywhere. And remember, when you do get it, the book is haunted, and you should always dance with the dead.
So how's the book haunted, Mary?
Many people who have helped me put it together, and I have, did the early readings. When I gave it to, they said that things started, that some of the spirits seemed to come to their house while they were reading the book. So things started moving around. They heard whispers in their ears. They could always hear me and my voice talking, but they said that the book itself was haunted.
This time is out. I'm so sorry to end this conversation. It's been so much fun working with you. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and should you find yourself dancing with the dead, y'all be careful, you hear?